if you want to own land, number one, you have to pay off all your existing debt first. Yes or no?
No. I mean, it comes down to debt to income ratio. That's what banks, mortgage companies will look at, is like, hey, where do you fall in that debt to income ratio? I know a lot of them like to be at 30 to 40% debt to income. I've heard of programs going up to 50%. So really, that's where you start out with, and that's simple. You know, you take your income and subtract what it is that your debt is, and they come up with that. But I would highly recommend just get with a professional in that mortgage or banking industry, and they will walk you through that, of what they look at, and they'll tell you, okay, hey, you're here, we can make this happen, or hey, we need to do this, this, and this to get you to where you want, right? And that's probably the best and first step I would do.
Okay, so we get to that point now. What do you recommend? Because we know the interest rates on everything is higher. We know that mortgage rates are like 7.5%.
Yeah, it's 7s, 8 I've heard of.
Now that's if you're buying. So the question is, and I know it's not a yes or no, but buy a house with land or buy land on its own. What are the differences there?
Well, personally, I guess it depends on your situation. So if your goal is just to hunt and maybe build someday, well, then stay living where you're at and buy that land and be set up. If you really want to live in the house and hope there's some land on there, or buy some land separate, that's a whole nother conversation. Your interest rates typically are going to be a little bit better. Your lending opportunities are going to be a little better with the house because there's more programs for that. There's government programs for buying a house and maybe with land, depending on how much acreage, versus just land. Typically, you can buy it with a lower down payment if there's a house there, versus with just land. Then a lot of times they're going to require 20 to 25% down.
That's what I was getting at. Because like on a house, you can put down as little as what, 4 or 5%,
almost zero. As some of these government programs,
but you're not doing that on land.
I've never heard of it. Yeah. So I know of some that once in a while you'll hear of 10 or 15% down. But on a house, that's usually on that. That's more of a conventional financing. So usually it's 3.3% to 5% down on a house.
So what are you looking at? Let's say I want to go out and there's 40 acres and I just want to buy that land. I'm not getting a 30-year mortgage on that. I mean, what is the loan situation on just a? I mean, I know there's different types of programs, but yeah. What am I looking at if that's the route I want to take?
So a lot of times what they'll do is you can do adjustable rate. You might do it for 3 years, but it's based on a 30-year or a 20-year or something like that to keep your payments down. But then you either at the end of that 3 years or 5 years, you're going to need to refinance it, pay it off, do something else with it. So, I bought land in different ways like that. I mean, I typically, like right now with these rates being this high, historically, they're not going to typically stay this high. So I'm not too afraid to buy right now. I'd actually prefer to buy right now because it's slowing down a bit. So it means I can maybe actually get some money off or get a better buy and know that I'm going to refinance in a couple 2 to 3 years.
So that's the catch-22. Right now is let's just use some numbers here. Right now, I'm talking about a small property in our area. Where you guys live might be different, but let's just say that property is $200,000. I'm going out and I'm getting a loan on that at 7.5%, 8.5%, which seems high.
Right.
Pretty much hedging my bets that a few years from now, that interest rate's going to be lower, but that land price is going to be a lot higher.
Correct. And that's what I'm hedging my bet on. When it was 3% and 4%, everything sold, Dan, like everything. The worst of the worst properties sold. I mean, we didn't see inspections. We didn't see anything. It was all about whatever the seller wanted. Now that trend is starting to reverse, and it's becoming more of a buyer's market, right? We're seeing inspections. We're seeing these things. So I would 100% take a chance now on these rates that they're going to come down and know that I'm going to get a little better buy now, but that land value is only going to go up at a pretty good rate.
And that's a warning that another friend of mine had given me. That, like, he said, if you know anybody who wants to buy, not to panic them, but right now is actually probably the time.
It is. Yeah, there's the least amount of buyers out there that we've had. There's still a shortage of properties, and that's why we're not seeing just like a huge drop-off. If there was an influx of a bunch of properties, well, that would be a different conversation. But right now, there's still a shortage of all types of properties. But the one thing I will say is the properties that would sell because it didn't matter because the market was so great, now they're starting to set, right? So those top tier properties that everybody wants, will still sell right now. It's the properties that nobody wanted before, but they bought them just because the money was 3%.
And they wanted something.
Now, those are the ones that are sitting, and that's where I would jump on and get that property, because that's where you're going to get that deal and be able to make a move on it.
Coming up next, DDH Properties producer Dave Gilane reintroduces his dad to bow hunting after a nearly 40-year hiatus. You're watching Deer and Deer Hunting Properties. Welcome back to Deer and Deer Hunting Properties. Now we're headed to a small property in central Wisconsin where DDH Properties producer Dave Gilane takes his dad out hunting for the first time in roughly 40 years. Let's see if he's a little rusty.
You ready?
I'm ready. Do I look ready?
Yeah.
Nice.
When's the last time you hunted?
17, 18
Years old, not years ago.
old, yeah. And I'm 39 now.
Right.
Plus 20.
So to give you a quick little backstory about my family as it pertains to deer hunting. I grew up predominantly in Southern California in the city, and I never deer hunted in my life until I landed this job. My dad, on the other hand, grew up small town Wisconsin. He's your typical old timer, grab your 30-30, grab your recurve bow, go out and sit at the base of a tree until something walks by.
We need the bow because I don't catch them as fast as I used to.
So I bought a small acreage in Wisconsin that I've been hunting for the last few years. And the rest of my family actually kind of followed me and moved back to Wisconsin as well. I decided, look, after getting a few deer myself, I felt more than comfortable bringing my dad over, setting him in a spot where I knew there was going to be a pretty good chance of seeing a deer. Of course, my dad had his sights set on the biggest buck in town, but for the most part, we're just looking to fill the freezer. First good animal, doe, buck, small buck, big buck, doesn't matter. Whatever he wanted to shoot, we were gonna shoot, and we were going to be happy.
So how different is this from when you used to hunt at 17?
I used to go out with a regular bow and arrow.
So you actually hunted with a recurve bow?
The recurve bow.
Did you ever kill anything?
Nah, I never even got close with the arrow, so I gave up bow.
I've been trained not to shoot a crossbow past 40 yards, so I told him at most 40 yards, but shoot for 30 yards if we can. And I knew I put us in a position to where a 30-yard shot should not have been a problem. Now this was his first time with a crossbow, so we sit for a couple hours until we see our first doe. Now she pops out of our woods to our west and goes straight to the cornfield in front of the blind. The edge of the cornfield is right at 45 yards. And then she actually goes up into the corn, and we think we lose her. But we didn't. Only a few seconds later, she pops out, and she starts heading right towards the blind. She starts walking towards us, and I'm telling him, wait for a broadside shot. Wait for a broadside shot.
Deer and Deer Hunting Properties is brought to you by Orion Hunting Products, America's #1 modular deer blind.
I'm telling him, wait for a broadside shot. Wait for a broadside.
She's crashing, she's crashing.
I'm filming, expecting her to keep walking, and then all I hear is the crossbow go off. Now, not the shot that I wanted him to take, but at the end of the day, luck was on his side. That doe dipped perfectly into that arrow. It went in and came out on the other side without hitting any guts at all. It got to the point to where it was going to be pretty dark, and we got out of the blind to go recover the doe, and she was only 30 yards up the corn rows.
Right. How's it feel killing a deer after 25 plus years?
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Right there.
There it is. There's your arrow.
Oh yeah. Looks like my fingers are a little dirty there.
Looks like some good blood.
Yep. Now let's go find her.
Yeah, we know she didn't go far. After you.
Yeah, there's that blood there. That's a leaf. Yeah, I can't see that good right now. I'm gonna say she's right in here. There she is.
Found her?
Found her. There she is.
Oh, that's a big doe.
Is it?
Yeah.
Nice. Oh yeah, there's the shot. It's been about 30 some years since I bow hunted, and we nailed her. I nailed her. And there was two other ones there, or one other one at that time. She kind of ran off to the side, was able to reload, but she came back out, almost had a shot, but then she stuck her head in the corn. It must have been moseying around, found this one and spooked, and they took off running. It looked like I was going to have two there within 20 minutes, so, but no horns, but it's okay. We got one. It was almost too easy.
Well, let's fast forward a year and see if it's just as easy the next time.
Okay, so last year, me and my dad were here. Shot his first doe after how many years?
Oh, 20 some, easily. Oh, longer than that. Oh, 30 some, almost 40.
30 some years. He doesn't know how old he is. That's okay. This year, we got a really good chance at bagging a buck for him. His last buck was when he was how old?
Oh, my last buck, I was probably about 16, 17.
16, 17 years old, and you're...
I'm gonna
67?
be, no, I'm gonna be 60 in a couple weeks. I just look like I'm 39 still.
Okay, so 16, 17, 60 years now. We're talking a 43-year difference between his first buck, which was a nice little 8-pointer, little basket 8. Beautiful first buck.
About like that.
Let's see what his second buck's gonna be. Let's get after it.
About like that.
It's like bringing a kid to the blind.
Deer and Deer Hunting Properties is brought to you by Spy Point Trail Cameras.
So, Dad, what would it mean to you if you got a buck for the first time in 43 years? I get to eat meat this year.
So we get out to the blind, and it doesn't take more than 10 minutes before we start seeing deer. Shortly after, a small 8-pointer comes in and puts on a show at 20 yards for us. Now, yeah, this buck was small, but he was still a lot bigger than the buck that my dad had shot at 17. So I gave him the option of shooting it if he wanted, but he decided to pass because there are a few more bigger bucks just down the field behind this guy. Another 5 minutes and a nice 9-pointer comes in right behind this little buck. Now, he was coming straight at us, but this guy definitely got my dad's heart rate going. If he gave us a perfectly broadside shot, we were gonna take this. And no, my dad promised this year he was gonna wait for a perfectly broadside shot. Well, what ended up happening was, one, my dad rushed the shot. His heart rate was going, it happens to all of us. He got that buck fever set in, and it just didn't work out. But two, turns out the arm of the blind was perfectly in line with where his arrow was going, and that arrow deflected off of that arm and ended up somewhere in Michigan. But man, my dad has to be simultaneously the luckiest and the unluckiest hunter in the deer woods. Not 5 minutes later, the buck that we just shot at decided to come back out, straight at the blind, a little off to the right this time, but he decided to start feeding at 35 yards, perfectly broadside.
I nailed him.
You got him.
I heard it hit.
I did too.
No, we didn't. What we heard was that arrow hitting a tree behind that deer after giving him a haircut. Goes to show, doesn't matter how long you do this, how often you do this, when that heartbeat is pumping, you don't notice things. So we both thought it was a success. Turns out it definitely wasn't. That deer is unharmed. He's okay. Can't say the same for my dad.
I don't think you're gonna find that one. So, Dad, what lesson did you learn today?
I learned, look where you're aiming your arrow, not just through the sights, but where your arrow is actually the path of direction in front of the arrow. You gotta pay attention, focus.
But you know what? After these lessons learned and after a lot of practicing in the upcoming off season, my dad will get one. It's just a matter of time. And either way, you can never beat making memories out in the deer woods with your dad.